Hello, we're going to be talking about the Allett C-34 and we're going to be talking about the cartridge and how that fits into the machine to make sure that we get longevity out of the machine, as little vibration as we possibly can, and as long a life out of the product as we can. But it's all about accuracy, and you need to understand some of the detail of this cartridge and its interchangeability. So there are several factors of the cartridge that inserts into the machine that we need to understand. First, down this side is where the drive comes. So the drive comes through the chain case here, and then we have a clutch system here which engages to give the drive to the cylinder. So we need to understand about that. The way that the cartridge sits in the machine is absolutely critical. The machine sits on 4 rail points, 2 at the back and 2 at the front. But there is also another point which sits just here, which holds the cartridge from lifting and lowering. The other contact point is just on this side, which is the knob that screws into the side that pushes the cartridge and retains the cartridge in its drive position. So this is the cylinder cartridge removed from the machine, so that we can now look at the detail of how the cartridge sits within the cavity of the C-34. So I talked about the 4 points that the machine sits on, and you can see those more clearly now that the machine is removed. That's this point, the back of this rail, the same on the other side, and you can see at the front as well. I'm just going to move over there. Importantly, there is a spacer that fits here, and this spacer needs to be flush up against the side. You can see the drive coupling just in here, and this is the point on this side of the cartridge which engages. There is a higher point just up here, which when the cartridge is moved sideways along the rails to locate against the drive coupling, there is a noggin on the side of this side plate which slips and engages here so that the cartridge is completely locked into the machine. The final part of the cartridge engagement, if you look at the side of the cartridge, you can see the points that the rails sit on the side plate. But finally, once the cartridge is sitting on the rails and now needs to move across the machine to engage with the drive, we use this knob just here, and that engages exactly and precisely with this point here. So when I lift and insert the cartridge, I'm going to make sure that I insert it to the left-hand side of the cavity and it sits on the rails over in this side, because I'm later going to push it across once it's on the rails to engage with the drive coupling. So here we go. So those sit very nicely and very accurately onto the rails, and it's important at this time that we understand that because it's sitting on 4 points, that they are all exactly level. If they're not, then there's something wrong and we'll need to make an adjustment. But as this cartridge stands, it's sitting exactly flat on all 4 points. So we now will need to slide it across to engage the drive coupling. So I'm going to first align the drive couplings so that they engage cleanly, and I can do that by rotating the cylinder. And then once I've done that, I can now turn this knob, which you'll see now the cartridge actually starts to move sideways, and if I have the coupling lined up correctly, which I have, then that will press home. And in its simplest format, I'm just going to make sure I've got that completely tightened up. I can, if I want to just make especially sure that it's locked, I can actually just give that a small tweak on this nut here to make sure that that's completely locked off. In the process of moving across sideways, it's not only engaged into the drive coupling, but it's also engaged into the noggin on the side of the side plate to make sure that the unit cannot lift. So what can easily happen is that with changing cartridges between different machines of different ages, is that we can get a situation where the thread on this knob is too long and we start to push and overload that cutting cartridge too much. That can give cutting problems, and it can also give vibration problems. So if you just watch this, as I tighten this knob, which is the thread is too long, you'll notice it starts to preload the cartridge too much and the side plate starts to bend outwards. So just watch this, see if you can see this happening. So as I turn this, I'm perfect tension here, but now I'm starting to tighten it more. And you'll see the side plate start to bow out. We've just gone too far with the tension. And we'll be starting to take the cutting blade contacts out of where they should be, either too close or too far away, and cause vibration of the cartridge as we preload the drive coupling on the other side. So if the thread is too long on this, it will preload the cartridge into the drive side, but it will also cause the bowing of this plate out. So I need to make some adjustments here. And the best way to do that is by taking an Allen key and actually tightening this up so it's just the right amount. I need it to be snug enough to be holding it in position both against the noggin and also the coupling on that side. I need to tighten it up to the right amount. At this point, I need this nut to actually be bottoming out just here. So that's the distance that I wanted to go, and I'm going to lock it off against this black knob. So by unscrewing this now as an assembly, I now need to just lock these two against each other. So I'm going to remove this now and I'm going to put it in a vise so I can hold the black knob and tighten the locking nut up against it. And then this should just give us the perfect preloading to the cartridge. So now I know I've got the right position, I've got the right length of thread here. I've measured this all on the machine. I can't quite hold the knob tight enough on its own, so I'm just going to put that into the vise and just hold that without squeezing it too tightly. And then I'm just going to lock this nut up against, and I'm going to pull that quite tight so that whole assembly stays really firmly locked together. So now I've tightened this all up in the vise. I know that I've got the length correct here because I checked it in the machine, and I've locked this nut against this handle here, the knob. So let's just check that out. When I screw this into the cartridge and it locates, I should see this nut bottom out against the side plate at exactly the same time as the cartridge is just held absolutely snugly in its right position. So I can just tighten that up now. I can tighten it up hand tight and that won't come loose. The side plate didn't bow out, but at the same time, when I hold the cartridge and move it from side to side, it's 100% held with no movement at all.